Nothing's ever perfect, but if you're open to the side, magic in the moment, life it's only mine. I'll never stop loving and treating people kind. One day the world will set me free, and I'll be dancing across the sky.
Okay, so we gather here at Hamilton City Hall today because it is officially the 2-year anniversary of the start of the Yellow Vest movement in Canada. Okay, so yeah, 2-year anniversary of the start of the Yellow Vest movement in Canada. No matter what, we've been out here for the majority of almost every Saturday for 2 years. Sometimes it's only 4 people, sometimes there was hundreds of people, sometimes it was just my friend Fraser standing alone because he's a true patriot. But the reason that I became an activist in the first place and joined the Yellow Vest movement in the first place was because what the people of France did inspired me, and they were bringing forth something called the referendum initiated by citizens. Now, what that is essentially is the power for the people to veto bad laws from their government. So when the government tries to force these lockdowns on us, as an example, we could have a referendum that we initiate as the people, and we could decide to shut that law down. And I thought this is a brilliant idea. Every country should have this safeguard for our rights. So that's what inspired me to join the Yellow Vest movement. Now, there was elements inside leadership roles within the Yellow Vest movement in Canada that didn't want patriots like myself to speak about the RIC, and instead it was formed, the movement was guided and formed to, with specific goals, 3 main goals: to abolish the carbon tax, no carbon tax, to abolish the UN Migration Pact, and to be self-sufficient with our energy. Pipelines for Alberta to keep our economy strong. We should not be buying Saudi Arabian oil at $60 billion a year when we have our own. So those were the 3 main goals of the Yellow Vest, and they are great goals to have. I agree with every one of them. But my point was that the RIC can fix all these problems. But that's a little bit about the background of the beginning of the movement. Another thing I want to mention about the Yellow Vest movement as well was it spread to at least 36 different countries worldwide. Everywhere from like Hong Kong, Ireland, Canada, you know what I mean? It was a huge movement. It was the beginning of this global awakening that we've seen progress in the last couple years. That's my opinion anyway. But there was elements of controlled opposition within the Yellow Vest movement, and it happens within all our movements that we've ever had. Whether you're talking Occupy Wall Street or anything, any populist movement by the people has always been infiltrated with controlled opposition or government agents, or, you know what I mean? Which brings me to the topic of the United We Roll convoy. I was a part of that. It was the largest truck convoy in Canadian history. It started as a Yellow Vest thing, and it was manipulated shortly after, and they changed their name to United We Roll. There was accounts of money that was missing and unaccounted for, and shady dealings, and the people that organized that event censored patriots like myself from speaking about the RIC again. So we have, I will not name names, but we have certain people that claim to be patriots, claim to stand for free speech, and are actively censoring other patriots. Just to give you an idea of how controlled opposition works from the inside of our movements. Now, we also had things like prominent leaders within the Yellow Vest movement using it as a platform to promote the People's Party of Canada, the PPC, and Maxime Bernier, which I do not agree with. I do not agree with having politicians in our movements. They're not on our side. They have they have complete ability to just lie to us with impunity. You know what I mean? So they can't be trusted. So I did not agree with the Yellow Vest movement turning political and being used by certain patriots to promote the PPC, and I don't agree with any movement turning political in that sense. There's also a man named Paul Fromm, and he's a known white supremacist. You know what I mean? All you have to do is Google his name, and I have a theory about him. There's a reason why I'm mentioning him, because he also shows up at almost every one of our movements, every one of our big rallies. Now, my theory about this man, about Paul Fromm, now, mind you, this is just my theory, my opinion, I have no proof. But I do believe that this man is a government plan by our Canadian government, CSIS or something, to come to our rallies for photo opportunities on unsuspecting patriots so that the media can label them as far-right, racist, Nazis, white supremacists, etc. So, caution to the wind. Whenever Paul Fromm shows up, there's pictures taken for the media, and patriots are called racist. And I've told this man, I've called him out on this a few times, and I've told him if he really supported our movements, he should stay home. Anyway, moving on to the next thing. Government controlling our movements, controlled opposition, I touched on that. Media manipulation, okay, again with them getting the photo opportunity to call us racist, but because the UN, or because the Yellow Vest Patriots stood against the UN Migration Pact, the media twisted that around to try to say that we were anti-immigrant or racist in that sense. Now, we're not against proper legal immigration. We're against the UN taking our sovereignty and the UN making these decisions. We want our country to be sovereign. We want to make our own decisions. So it has nothing to do with being anti-immigrant or racist. That's just a ploy that they use to try to discredit us. So, yeah, that's just one of the ways that the media has been manipulating us, and it's so relevant now with what's going on, and the anti-lockdown protesters, the hugs over mask people and everything, and the demonizing that they get from the media. It's very prevalent. People are starting to wake up to the fact that the media is garbage. But we've also suffered through attacks by Antifa. If you don't know who Antifa is, they're essentially communists, for the most part, that want to censor patriots, and they attack us repeatedly. We've been attacked. We've had seniors attacked. One of them had his ribs broken when they jumped on him. So we've been assaulted multiple times, and the reason why I bring this up is these people are ordered and funded by government and government programs. And we have proof of this because the rebel media did a Freedom of Information request about the United We Roll convoy that I mentioned. And in this Freedom of Information request, it was discovered that the government, through the RCMP, invited Antifa communists to attack us in Ottawa. So we have the proof of it through a Freedom of Information request, and it's right there on paper. Besides all of the media smearing, being called racist and being assaulted and my name being demonized and everything, I've also been given a trespass notice here at City Hall, and I'm still here. But long story short, the government is so afraid, our city councilors in Hamilton are so afraid of what I have to say that they try to ban me from being at City Hall over an assault that I wasn't even part of. And I was on the corner of Bay and Main. I wasn't even here at City Hall. So, again, just another tactic they do to try to discredit us, silence us. Same with all the tickets that the Patriots are getting nowadays from the anti-lockdown protests. And then meanwhile, you have other groups such as Antifa, Black Lives Matter, which is a communist front. It has nothing to do with racism. All my black friends agree with my point. BLM, Antifa, all these groups that again are funded by our own government are trying to defund the police. When now, if anything, I do believe our police are in need of better training, first off. But to defund them completely, to get rid of them, is just asking for chaos. More people are going to get hurt. Not enough attention is going to be given to people. I have a friend who just last night called the cops over needing help over a dispute with her neighbors, and they didn't even show up. She called them at 4 a.m., they didn't even come. So it's only, things like that are only going to get worse if we defund our police. We need Antifa riots on Lock Street when they smashed everything up. Absolutely, yes. And these people are, for the most part, protected by our government, funded by our government. You know what I mean? The police are told to look the other way for the most part. We need to support our police, but at the same time, we need to keep them in check. We only need to support the ones that will honor their oath. The ones that are disavowing their oaths right now are not even police as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, the whole objective of the defund the police is to cause chaos and to bring in UN troops. So order out of chaos, right? So they want to bring in the UN troops so that the United Nations and these global elites can have more power, and it's part of issuing their one world government agenda. I want to touch on Trudeau and how much he's betrayed our country and his treason, above and beyond all his ethics violations and his scandal and everything. I can spell out 4 different ways that Justin Trudeau is guilty of treason. The Migration Pact, signing our sovereignty over to the UN. Our sovereignty was not his to give. That was an act of treason against us. Funding Islamic extremist terrorists. There's a man named Tom Quiggin, who is a court-certified terrorism expert, used to work for the RCMP and CSIS, and for the last couple of years he's been going around and publicly speaking about this. He has the documented proof that Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government are funding the Muslim Brotherhood and everything with our tax money. So again, that's treason. He's also openly letting in ISIS militants into our country. The Danforth shooting was, ISIS took credit for the Danforth shooting. That was buried by our media. Again, treason, bring enemies into our country. And now, we just heard, as of last week, breaking news, he is training Chinese military on Canadian soil. Again, this is treason. So that's 4 different ways I can break down justification for Justin Trudeau to be charged with treason. I want to share a little bit about my activist experience speaking about Justin Trudeau. I have had the personal privilege and pleasure of chasing him out of Hamilton a couple times. My most favorite and prominent moment was during the Labor Day parade. And I'm so proud of Hamilton on this day because he was shown that he was not welcome here 3 different times in one afternoon. So just to break down the story, Justin Trudeau tried to join the Labor Day parade in Hamilton, and he was prevented at the beginning of the parade by native protesters because he still hasn't provided them with clean water. So he was prevented from joining the beginning of the parade. He had to get around that and join the parade halfway through, at which point I met him with my megaphone and I started naming off the list of his close personal friends that are convicted pedophiles, and there's several of them. One of them, I'll name a couple. Christopher Ingleson, who was his college roommate, convicted of running an international pedophile ring. Benjamin, I can't remember the last name. He co-authored our children's sex ed curriculum. Convicted pedophile who is teaching other kids or other people how to molest their kids online. So Justin Trudeau is close personal friends with multiple convicted pedophiles, and I started naming off the list of these people, these sick people, and Justin Trudeau's affiliation with them, and he skipped. By the time he got to the next street.
You lost that joke.
Okay. You're still filming, I'll just go. Sorry. By the time we got to the next side street, he had got in his motorcade and left the parade because he did not want that attention on him, and it took me about 2.5 minutes flat to run him out of Hamilton. Now, he tried to join the barbecue after the Labor Day parade, and the postal workers and the steel workers, again, made it known that he's not welcome in Hamilton. So Labor Day parade, Labor Day when he was trying to get reelected was one of my proudest moments and one of my favorite days. I was also part of the event where a man named Tim Geiser attempted to perform a citizen's arrest on Justin Trudeau. And I'm very proud to say that I was there that day to support him, and I did everything I could to help him afterwards. He's a true patriot, and as far as I'm concerned, he's a Canadian hero, and we're lucky enough to be having him speak after me. I was also part of a huge march, a 4,000 people march on the UN or on the U.S. Embassy by Canadian patriots to demand that Justin Trudeau be investigated for these treasonous acts and his corruption. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. It was a historical thing in actuality, and the media ignored it completely. I'm also very proud to say that I've been part of protesting in front of Doug Ford's house after he's been enforcing these lockdown measures. We have to keep the pressure on him. He's actually singled me out on 2 different occasions on the news, personally, for flying my flag upside down, saying that I'm disrespecting my country and I'm not welcome here. So the reason why I bring up Doug Ford is because it's not just the Liberals or the Conservatives. They've all sold us out. There's no difference in our political parties. They all have an agenda, and they've sold us out. As I said, politicians are not to be trusted at all or involved in our movements. And this includes the anti-lockdown movement and the new Republican Party of Canada, and it includes any politician. You know what I mean? You can't trust somebody who's openly allowed to lie to you. I want to mention the fact that suicides and ODs, overdoses, have increased exponentially, and this has been happening since before the lockdown, but the lockdown has made it so much worse. It far exceeds the amount of COVID deaths that we've experienced, and Alberta has been hit the hardest because they've shut down our oil industry, and Alberta's been hit the hardest. We lost 600,000 jobs in Canada before the lockdown, and the lockdown is set to destroy an estimated 53% of small businesses. Canada is in a lot of trouble. And we've been speaking about this since before the lockdowns and before all this happened. We need to bring awareness to all these things, right? Things are so much worse now that we have the UN at the helm controlling things. And we, as the Yellow Vests, we tried to warn you all that, like, we need to keep our Canadian sovereignty. We can't be giving our sovereignty on to the UN and its global elites. And things have gotten so much worse since we have. And you can see it now. You can see it. It's prevalent in our daily lives. This whole COVID thing, this COVID scare is all based on PCR tests, which are completely unreliable. It's all based on fear. The survival rate of COVID-19 is 99.8%. Everything is like, you don't have to die of COVID to be marked as a COVID death either. They just have to say that it's in your system. So you can die from a car accident and still be marked as a COVID death. The numbers are unreliable. The test is unreliable. There's been no flu recorded this year, when on average we get, 36,000 deaths, I think, in Canada from the flu on average. And if I'm not mistaken on those numbers. And there's been 0 cases of the flu this year because they're all being marked as COVID. So we should be weary of this manipulation. It's propaganda and it's fear-based, that they want you afraid so that they can take your rights away. They're using COVID to usher in what they're calling a great reset, which is based on an economic collapse and bringing in a one world currency and a world government to control it. These are the goals of Agenda 2030, which is a one world government, one world digital currency, an end to medical freedom, forced vaccination. Anybody who spoke about these things 6 or 8 months ago would have been labeled as a crazy person. But now we have Justin Trudeau on TV a few weeks ago openly saying that this pandemic has given him the opportunity to move towards the Great Reset and the goals of Agenda 2030. We have our Prime Minister openly telling you what he has planned for you. Now, the Great Reset, the man who wrote a book on it and is head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, I think is his name, has this to say about the Great Reset. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, I don't think so. So they're using this pandemic, this so-called pandemic, COVID-19, to usher in all these changes that the people don't want. We don't want them. They're not good for our children's future. They're not good for us. And to do this, they need us weak economically. They want to cause an economic collapse. They want us in fear. They want us scared so that we will give our rights away. There's a quote by Benjamin Franklin, those who are willing to trade liberty for security deserve neither. Sorry, bear with me here. So we're experiencing a massive loss of rights, and one of the biggest ones is forced vaccination or compulsed vaccination, because they're saying that it's not going to be mandatory, but they're also on the news saying that there's going to be restrictions. You can't travel, you can't work, can't go see a concert or whatever. Now this is coercion. There's no other way to say it. This is coercion, and Article 6 of the Nuremberg states that forced or coerced medical intervention, i.e. mandatory vaccination or anything like that, is considered a war crime. So we have a government openly discussing committing war crimes on us and our children, and using the military to do it. Again, people, we're in trouble. And just know that there's millions of people like me that will refuse to take this vaccine, and we will fight it to our dying breath. Oaths. I want to take a second to talk about oaths. All our government officials have taken an oath to uphold our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. All our military has taken an oath to protect our country and our constitutional rights. All our police have taken an oath to uphold our country and our constitutional rights. Now, they did not take an oath to defend the Liberal government or the UN. They took an oath to the people of Canada, and they need to honor that oath, or they need to be corrected. You know what I mean? Because that oath gives them the power to say, no, I will not obey this law, it's unconstitutional, I will not enforce it. It gives them protection to do that, because they're obligated to do. They're obligated to uphold our constitutional rights. So I'm imploring all the military and the police to please to just honor your oaths and stand with the people. And we don't want conflict, we want change. Like I said, we tried to warn you about all this as Yellow Vests 2 years now, that big changes are coming and they're not good. And the government has done more to validate our claims in the last 6, 8 months, 9 months than I ever could, as far as this one world government agenda, the Great Reset, digital currency. Like, it's all openly in front of people's faces now. Like I said, we have the Prime Minister admitting it on national TV. So I want to end it with a few quotes here. One is from one of my favorite people, John F. Kennedy, and it's, like I said, we don't want conflict, but those that make a peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. And I want to finish it off by saying thank you, everybody. I love you all. Keep up the good fight, and the power of the people is greater than the people in power.